child-free for 30 years. At my father-in-law's funeral, my 59-year-old husband Arthur brought back an 8-year-old son. He brazenly declared to me, Eleanor, even though I was the one who suggested we be child-free back then, I still can't let the Hayes family name die out without an heir. He's my son, which means he's your son too. You'll need to take good care of him from now on. I glanced at the child, who was pulling a face at me, then calmly removed the mourning armband from my arm and got up to leave. Seeing this, relatives and friends rushed to stop me, urging me to be more understanding at my age. Arthur, however, sneered, let her go. A woman in her 50s still throwing tantrums like a young girl. She should really consider who would bother with an old broad like her once I'm gone. I simply smiled, and went home to pack my bags. He had no idea that across the ocean, someone had been waiting for me my entire life. While I was packing at home, Arthur and his son Dylan returned. As usual, Arthur retreated to his study the moment he got home. Dylan, however, scampered around the house like a monkey when he darted into my room. I was just about to place my jewelry box into my suitcase. Seeing this, he immediately ran over, shoved me aside, snatched the jewelry box, and yelled, "Old hag, what right do you have to take my things?" I landed on the floor, speechless, and asked him, "Everything in here I bought myself. How is it yours?" Dylan stated with self-righteous confidence, "My mom said I'm my dad's only son, so his things will be mine sooner or later. The money you used to buy these things must have been given to you by my dad, just like he gives money to my mom. So these things belong to my dad, which means they're mine." Old hag, don't even think about stealing my things. What a load of twisted logic. He truly was the renowned writer Arthur's good son. I couldn't be bothered to reason with a child, so I reached for the jewelry box he was hiding behind his back. But before my hand even touched the edge of the box, Dylan shrieked and burst into tears. Hearing the commotion, Arthur rushed over, shielded his son behind him, and yelled at me, "Eleanor, take out your anger on me, but if you dare lay a hand on my son, I'll make you regret it." Seeing the identical robe-like expressions on the father and son's faces, I let out a bitter laugh. "Arthur, before you yell at me, why don't you ask your son what good deed he's actually done?" He looked down at Dylan, who, in stark contrast to the devil child he was with me, began whimpering pitifully between sobs, "Dad, I just took a jewelry box, and she came to hit me. She even said she'd throw me off the balcony." Arthur heard this and, without bothering to distinguish right from wrong, yelled at me again, "Eleanor, it's just a simple jewelry box. Is it really worth laying hands on a child over it? Look how scared he is. Apologize to Dylan right now. Apologize to this unruly little monster." I looked at Arthur's face, distorted by his bias, and suddenly felt a profound sense of unfamiliarity and absurdity. I couldn't be bothered to argue anymore. "Arthur, I accept that it's pointless to reason with an 8-year-old, but surely I can reason with a 59-year-old adult like you? My belongings are off limits to everyone. That includes you, and especially your son of unknown origin." "Son of unknown origin? He's Arthur's son. He's the Hayes family's heir," Arthur vehemently retorted, like a cat with its tail stepped on. I twisted my lips into a sardonic smile. "Is that so? Fine. Your child. You keep him safe. My belongings, I'm taking them with me." I bypassed the father and son, intending to pick up the jewelry box Dylan had thrown on the floor, but Dylan kicked it away. The box tumbled and split open, and my pearl necklace, a jade bracelet I'd bought with my own manuscript fees, and the gold ring Arthur gave me when he proposed, clattered and scattered across the floor. Nah. Old hag, you're not getting it." Dylan stuck out his tongue and pulled a face at me. I glared at him furiously, but Arthur immediately shielded him again, showing no remorse. I didn't look at them anymore. I knelt down and silently picked up the pieces of jewelry one by one. The necklace string was loose, the jade bracelet had a crack, and even the gold ring was dented and deformed. At that moment, my heart died completely. They weren't just jewelry. They were the few remaining imprints of my past 30 years. Things that were truly and completely mine. Now, even they were covered in dust. I carefully gathered them, then zipped up my suitcase. "Arthur, there's nothing left for us to say. I'll have my lawyer send over the divorce papers as soon as possible." He sneered. "You want a divorce? Eleanor, you're in your 50s and still thinking of divorce. Aren't you afraid people will laugh at you?" I didn't respond. I pulled my suitcase and walked downstairs without looking back. He became enraged and yelled at me, "Fine, Eleanor. You're tough. I'll be waiting for your divorce papers." I want to see what kind of life a 50-something, useless old hag like you can make for herself without me. Don't come crying back, begging me to take you back. I couldn't be bothered with him. I just wanted to leave this disgusting house as quickly as possible. But then, go to hell, old hag. Amidst piercing scream, I tumbled down the stairs, hitting my head against the wall, and passed out instantly. When I next woke up, I was lying in a hospital room. My head was bandaged, and one arm was broken. Seeing me awake, Arthur, who was by the bed, spoke first. Well, Dylan only meant to play a joke on you. He didn't expect you to actually fall down the stairs. He's just a child, not very sensible. As an elder, you shouldn't hold it against him. A joke? My voice trembled with weakness and fury. Arthur, I almost died. You call that a joke? Arthur waved his hand dismissively. Oh, come on. You're fine, aren't you? The doctor said you just have a mild concussion and a broken arm. Nothing serious. You'll recover with some rest. So just drop it. Besides, Dylan is just a child. What bad intentions could he possibly have? No bad intentions? Does an 8-year-old child not understand that pushing someone down the stairs is dangerous? He clearly did it on purpose. I was about to argue when the hospital room door opened. I looked up to see a young woman in a white dress enter, carrying a thermos. I recognized her. She was Arthur's student, Tiffany. Eleanor, how are you doing? I was so worried when I heard you fell down the stairs. Her voice was sweet and tearful, but her eyes held a clear gleam of triumph. I suddenly understood who she was, and ignored her. She didn't seem embarrassed, pouring a bowl of chicken soup from the thermos and saying, Eleanor, I specially made chicken soup to help you recover. Please have some while it's warm. With that, she picked up a spoon, pretending to feed me. I turned my face away and said coldly, take it away. I don't need it. Tiffany's hand froze in midair, her eyes reddening further. She looked at Arthur, aggrieved. Arthur immediately frowned, glaring at me with displeasure. Eleanor, Tiffany came to see you out of kindness and made you soup. What kind of attitude is that? My attitude? I sneered. Soup made by the mother of the murderer who pushed me down the stairs? I'm afraid drinking it will shorten my life. Arthur's face flushed then paled. He pointed at me and yelled, You, how dare you speak like that? Dylan didn't do it on purpose, and knew nothing about it. She came to see you with good intentions. How can you be so ungrateful? Seeing his reaction, Tiffany timely began to sob. Eleanor, I know you hate me, and you dislike Dylan. But truly isn't a bad child. He's just a little mischievous. He cried all the way home yesterday, saying he was wrong, that he shouldn't have fought with you over things, and caused you to fall down the stairs. He's still so young. Won't you please forgive him this one time? As she spoke, she looked at me with pleading eyes, as if I were the aggressive, cruel woman refusing to forgive a child. Seeing her act, Arthur was overcome with tenderness and immediately pulled her into his arms to comfort her. Tiffany, it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. She brought it on herself. My husband, while I was gravely injured and bedridden, was with his mistress, accusing me of not being generous enough, of refusing to forgive the illegitimate child who nearly killed me. Get out! Both of you, get out! I raised my voice, which pulled at my head injury, causing a wave of dizziness. Tiffany recoiled into Arthur's arms, whispering, Arthur, never mind. Eleanor is still angry. Let's not provoke her. I'll take Dylan home first. We can come back to see Eleanor another day. See what? Don't bother coming back. She's so ungrateful. Arthur yelled furiously, then hugged Tiffany and walked out, leaving me with a final remark, you just stay here and reflect on yourself. The hospital room door slammed shut, separating me from that wretched pair, and silencing the outside world. The world was finally quiet. I stared at the pristine white ceiling, and tears finally streamed down my face, not from physical pain, but from the bone-chilling indifference and despair. This was the man for whom I had sacrificed 30 years of my youth and sincere affection. For him, I had been a housekeeper for 30 years, giving up my chance to become a writer. For him, I had to choose to be child-free, never becoming a mother, and he took it all for granted, enjoying my care and exploiting my inspiration. He even had the audacity to bring his illegitimate child and demand that I graciously accept him. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I reopened them, my gaze was filled with cold resolve. I had cried enough, and I had seen clearly. In that moment, any lingering affection vanished into thin air. Divorce was no longer a fit of pique. It was my only path to survival. I picked up my cell phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Hello. Excuse me. Could you please connect me with a lawyer? I need one right away. The lawyer was highly efficient, sending over the drafted divorce papers the very next day. Soon after, Arthur's phone call came, his voice frantic with rage. Eleanor, are you out of your mind? You want half of my manuscript fees? What right does a housewife who doesn't work have to so much money? You're extorting me. I listened calmly. Once he finished yelling, I said coolly, Arthur, have you forgotten how many of your literary collections I ghostwrote? The other end of the line fell silent instantly. I sneered. My taking half is perfectly justifiable. Furthermore, I own half of that house. If you're unwilling to part with the money, we can meet in court. It would be a good opportunity for a judge to weigh in on whether your marital infidelity, leading to an 8-year-old illegitimate child, constitutes fault, and whether I should be entitled to a larger share of assets. Arthur was a public figure who cared about his image. He feared nothing more than a court battle that would expose his sordid affairs to the public eye. As expected, after a moment of silence, his tone softened considerably when he spoke again, though still with a hint of gnashing teeth. Fine, Eleanor. I can give you the money and the house as per the agreement, but you must sign the divorce papers immediately. No more talk of fault, and no more talk of ghostwriting. Agreed. I didn't want to get tangled up with him, so I readily agreed. We arranged a time to handle the divorce procedures at the county's office. I hung up the phone, feeling no sense of triumph, only the weariness of closure. I knew that with Arthur's vindictive nature, having him bleed money like this meant he would never let it go. Greater humiliation, I suspected, was still to come. Sure enough, the day the divorce cooling-off period expired, the weather was gloomy. I arrived alone at the county's office entrance, dressed in a simple, plain-colored dress, my expression calm. Arthur, however, was dressed in a sharp suit, one hand holding his son's, the other draped around his mistress. He stood on the steps, looking like a triumphant winner, gazing at me provocatively. I glanced at them, then quickly averted my eyes, as if I had just seen something foul. The proceedings were unexpectedly quick. The staff, likely accustomed to all sorts of divorcing couples, merely gave our odd combination a fleeting extra lip before skillfully stamping the papers and handing us our respective divorce decrees. Touching the small booklet, my heart was a mix of emotions. 30 years, just like that, lightly ended. No sooner had I stepped out of the county's office than Tiffany sashayed up to me, shaking the marriage certificate in her hand, her face radiating triumph. Eleanor, you guarded Arthur for 30 years, but in the end, you couldn't keep him. Her voice was sugary sweet, but her words were like venom-tipped needles. But I do have to thank you. You realized you were past your prime, couldn't compare to me, and proactively made way for me. Don't worry, from now on, I'll take good care of Arthur and our son. After she spoke, Dylan also ran over, spat at me, and said, "Get lost, old hag. My mom is the lady of this house now." I rolled my eyes and looked at Arthur. He stood by, arms crossed, a cold sneer on his lips, making no move to stop them, clearly tacitly approving his new partner and son's humiliation of me. Occasionally, passers-by cast curious glances, but Tiffany showed no shame, becoming even more triumphant. She pulled an invitation from her expensive handbag and thrust it into my hand, saying, "Eleanor, even though you just divorced Arthur, you were still married for a long time. Arthur and I are having our wedding next month at the hotel. Your favorite. If you're free, please come attend the wedding reception." I looked at the glaring invitation, then at Arthur's smug, petty expression, and then at the young, brazen woman and the unruly child standing before me. Suddenly, I smiled. It wasn't a smile of grief or self-deprecation, but one born of an extreme sense of absurdity. Taking the invitation, I looked at Arthur, my eyes full of mockery. "Arthur, congratulations. You finally got what you wished for. I hope your son truly inherits the Hayes family's legacy and cares for you in your old age." Arthur, realizing my words held a hidden meaning, angrily asked, "Eleanor, what do you mean?" I ignored him, turned, and got into a taxi. As the taxi pulled away from the county's office, that nauseating trio was finally left behind. In the rearview mirror, Arthur was furiously pointing and seemingly yelling at the taxi, while his new partner busily tried to calm him down, fearing he might just collapse. I averted my gaze and looked at the flight details displayed on my phone. a sense of light relief washing over me. Back in my temporarily rented small apartment, I began making intensive preparations for my trip to Africa. It was a journey I had planned for a long time but repeatedly put off because Arthur had once said, "Why go suffer so far away?" Now, no one could stop me. Visa, vaccinations, luggage, everything proceeded in an orderly manner. During this time, Arthur, probably to show off his new life, specifically called me once. The background noise on the call was chaotic, suggesting a high-end restaurant, with a hint of drunkenness and triumph. He told me, "Eleanor, now I finally understand what real living is. Tiffany is young, sensible, and takes wonderful care of me. Dylan is smart and lively. What about you? Alone in that cold little apartment. Life must be hard, right? Do you regret divorcing me?" I held the phone, listening to the faint sounds of a woman's sweet laughter and a child loudly demanding some toy on his end. Feeling nothing but profound irony, I calmly replied, "Arthur, I wish you well with your newfound happiness. I'm busy packing for a trip. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." He scoffed disdainfully. "A trip? Humph. Just trying to save face. With your paltry retirement income, where could you possibly travel? A local BB?" I didn't bother to respond and simply hung up. It's pointless to discuss ice with a summer insect. He would forever live in the beautiful dream he wove for himself. And that was fine. Time flew by, and soon it was the day of Arthur and Tiffany's wedding. At the wedding banquet, glasses clinked and laughter filled the air. It was a lively and bustling scene. Arthur wore an expensive custom-made suit, his hair meticulously combed, his face beaming with a look of smug satisfaction. Tiffany, in a pristine white wedding gown, nestled beside him, her young face radiating the superiority of a victor. Dylan, also in a small suit, darted among the guests, accepting insincere compliments. Watching it all, Arthur felt immensely pleased. He had finally achieved double success in both career and family. After several rounds of drinks, the atmosphere was at its peak. Arthur scanned the room. But I, the one he expected to witness his happiness and then feel ashamed of myself, was nowhere to be seen. A wave of displeasure at being disregarded welled up in his heart. He pulled out his cell phone, found my number, and intended to call me to greet me properly. But the wedding coordinator suddenly approached, holding a beautifully wrapped gift box. "Mr. Hayes, a delivery person just brought this. He specified that you must open it personally at the wedding. He said it was a wedding gift from Ms. Eleanor." A wedding gift from Eleanor? Arthur froze. Then a knowing and contemptuous smile spread across his face. Just as he thought, this woman still couldn't let go of him. Was she seeing that remarriage was hopeless and wanted to make amends? To reconcile? Or perhaps she had finally faced reality and wanted to save a little face by sending a gift? The surrounding guests also noticed the interruption and cast curious glances. Tiffany also leaned in, saying sweetly, "Oh, she's quite generous, isn't she? She didn't come, but her gift did." The mockery in her voice was undisguised. Arthur proudly lifted his chin, speaking loudly to several friends and relatives who had gathered around. "See? I told you Eleanor is sensible, even though we've separated. I appreciate the gesture." He deliberately pressed the speakerphone button, and his phone announced, "The number you have dialed is currently switched off." He shrugged, smiling at everyone. She's probably too embarrassed to answer. Come on, let's see what she sent. Under the focused gazes of the crowd, Arthur, with a condescending air of superiority, slowly unwrapped the exquisite gift paper. Inside was a hard cardboard box. He opened the lid, and instead of the precious item he expected, there were only a few thin sheets of paper. His smile froze, and an ominous premonition suddenly arose. He abruptly pulled out the papers. It was a photocopy of a medical examination report. The paper was already a little yellowed, but the handwriting and the hospital seal were clearly legible. Patient, Arthur, in the diagnosis results column. Those bolded Chinese diagnoses burned onto his retina like red-hot brands. Diagnosis, azoospermia, no sperm count, infertile. Date of report, 20 years ago. Boom! A rush of blood shot to Arthur's head. His hand, holding the report, trembled violently and uncontrollably. Azoospermia, no sperm count, infertile. Then where did his 8-year-old son, Dylan, come from? He suddenly looked up, staring intently at Tiffany. She was unnerved by his gaze and forced a smile as she leaned closer. "Honey, what's wrong? What did she send?" Her gaze fell upon the report. When she saw the diagnosis, her smile instantly froze. and her face turned utterly pale. No, it's not. Honey, let me explain. She frantically tried to snatch the report. Explain? Arthur violently shoved her hand away, grabbed her hair, and let out a thundering roar like a completely enraged beast. Bitch, you tell me, what is this? Azoospermia. I can't have children. So whose illegitimate child is Dylan? Ha! The entire banquet hall instantly fell silent. Everyone was stunned by this sudden turn of events. Oh my god. Azoospermia? That child isn't Arthur's? This wedding has become a joke. Tiffany looked so innocent, but it turns out she's been, for a long time. Arthur has been raising someone else's son for 8 years. Whispers rose like a tide, and every face was filled with the excitement of an unfolding drama. Tiffany was shaken dizzy by Arthur, her wedding dress torn out of shape. She shrieked and cried, "No, the report is wrong. Dylan is your son. Eleanor, that vicious woman, forged it. She's framing me." Arthur had completely lost his mind, raising his hand and giving Tiffany a resounding slap. Framing you? How could she forge a report from 20 years ago? I lost half my family assets because of you. And you made me a cuckold? You made me treat an illegitimate child like a treasure? I'll kill you. You slut. The scene completely spiraled out of control. Arthur, looking insane, punched and kicked Tiffany. Tiffany, not to be outdone, shrieked and clawed at Arthur's face with her nails. Dylan, terrified, wailed and hid under a table. Some guests tried to break up the fight. Others quickly got out of the way, and some secretly recorded it on their phones. The wedding venue instantly turned into an all-out brawl. Tables and chairs were knocked over, dishes were shattered, and the cries of the child, the screams of the woman, the roars of the man, and the gasps of the guests merged into a chaotic cacophony. Finally, someone called the police. When the police arrived, they forcibly separated Arthur and Tiffany, who were still fighting. Both of them, bruised and battered, were taken into police cars in full view of everyone. A glorious wedding ended miserably, with the bride and groom both taken to the police station for mediation, becoming the biggest joke in the city. By the time Arthur returned home from giving a statement at the police station, distraught and disheveled, it was already early the next morning. His face was marked with bruises, his expensive suit wrinkled. In his mind, Tiffany's ultimate tearful confession during the police mediation kept replaying. The child truly wasn't his. He was her ex-boyfriend's. She had only been interested in Arthur's fame and money. Immense shame, humiliation, and regret gnawed at his heart like venomous snakes. He recalled Eleanor's calm demeanor, her meaningful words as she left, and his own smugness over the past few months. He was nothing but a pathetic fool. Frantically, he called Eleanor's number, but it was still switched off. Like a headless chicken, he rushed to Eleanor's rented small apartment, knocking desperately, only to be told by the landlord, "Ms. Eleanor? She moved out a few days ago, said she was going to Africa to be a volunteer. On the day of Arthur's wedding, I landed in Africa and went to a children's home to volunteer with the person whose phone number I had. About a week later, Arthur, having somehow gotten my new number, called me. After a moment of hesitation, I answered. On the other end, Arthur's voice was hoarse and weary, filled with despair. Eleanor, you knew I had azoospermia, no sperm count, all along. Why didn't you tell me? I walked to the window, watching the magnificent sunset over the African savanna outside, and said in a flat tone, Arthur, your parents told me not to. The reason I'm telling you now is simply because I believe you have the right to know. After all, we can't have the Hayes family's heir being mistaken. Can we? Eleanor, you venomous woman. You ruined me. You ruined my family. His voice was tearful, clearly having suffered a tremendous blow. I coldly retorted, Arthur, you were the one who, in your arrogance, believed I couldn't have children, but then agreed to be child-free for my parents' support. Later, when you were older, you went back on your word and picked up a convenient son for yourself. Isn't it you yourself who ruined you? The other end of the line fell silent for a moment, save for heavy breathing. Then, as if collapsing, he began to ramble incoherently. I didn't. I wanted to grow old with you, but that bitch seduced me. She saw I had some fame, some money. She tricked me. She knew all along I couldn't have children. Dylan is her illegitimate child with some other man. She just wanted to find a scapegoat. She made a fool of me. Eleanor, I'm finished. I have no family left. Nothing. His voice was filled with despair and regret. I listened quietly, feeling not a ripple of emotion. All of this, he deserved. When he had stood at the county's office entrance, humiliating me with his mistress and illegitimate child, had he ever imagined this day would come? Arthur, I interrupted his lament. Those are your problems, and they have nothing to do with me. From now on, don't call this number again. Eleanor, don't hang up, he cried out urgently, a hint of pleading in his voice. I know I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. I was foolish and led astray. Please come back. Let's remarry. Now I realize that only you truly cared for me. Only you. Listening to his profound repentance, I almost burst out laughing. He hadn't truly repented. He had simply lost his useful mistress, lost his fake son, and become destitute. Now he wanted to grasp at me, his former lifeline, attempting to return to a life where someone would unconditionally serve and tolerate him. Arthur, what was between us ended completely the moment you showed up with your son. Remarry? Do you think that's possible? With that, I gave him no further opportunity, decisively hung up the phone, and blocked his number. After blocking Arthur, the world became peaceful. I devoted all my energy to working at the children's home. Most of the children here had experienced trauma from war, disease, or poverty, yet their eyes remained pure, filled with a longing for love and care. I taught them to read, led them in songs, and watched them run carefree under the sun. They called me Mom, drew pictures for me, and listened as I read the new poems I wrote. Peaceful, harmonious, tranquil. I gradually found the person I had lost in my marriage. I rented a simple but clean cottage near the children's home. In my free time, I would walk to a nearby hill. There stood a simple grave, with a name carved on the headstone, David. He was a former comrade of Arthur and me, and also the man who had waited for me his entire life. When we were young, the three of us were very close. David was honest and dependable, like an older brother who looked after us. It was obvious to many that he had feelings for me. Even Arthur used to joke, David looks at you differently. But back then, I was drawn to Arthur's talent and romantic overtures, and ultimately chose him. David said nothing. After I married, he voluntarily applied for a transfer to the toughest regions, and later joined aid projects in Africa. Eventually, due to an accident, he was laid to rest in this land he loved. I only learned of his death a few years ago, when I received a call from his friend in Africa. After arriving in Africa, that friend gave me a tin box he had left behind. Inside were letters he had written to me intermittently over several decades but had never sent. The letters contained no fervent declarations, only quiet concern and occasional expressions of joy or worry upon hearing news of me. The last letter, written before his death, said, Eleanor, I hear you're not as happy as you appear to be. Arthur, he's not truly a warm and considerate person. If one day you grow tired and want a different life, perhaps you could come here and see. The sky here is vast, big enough to hold all your grievances and disappointments. As I read those letters, tears streamed down my face. Only then did I understand what a profound love I had missed. I chose to stay in Africa, partly to start a new life, and partly, I wanted to be closer to the man who had waited for me his entire life, and ultimately dedicated his life to this land. I often sat by David's grave, talking to him, sometimes about the changes back home, sometimes about the children's amusing antics. The wind rustled through the wild grass by the grave, a soft whispering sound, and I knew it was his response. Life flowed on, peaceful and fulfilling, until one day, the director of the children's home approached me, saying that a Chinese man was asking around for me, and it seemed he would find his way here soon. I understood immediately. Who else could it be but Arthur? Indeed, the next afternoon, as I was teaching the children a Chinese song, a familiar yet unfamiliar figure appeared at the entrance of the children's home. It was Arthur. He looked much older, his hair mostly white, his face unshaven. The once fitted shirt now hung loosely and wrinkled on his body. His eyes were bloodshot, and his entire demeanor exuded the desperate, obsessive desperation of someone at the end of their rope. He stared intently at me, his gaze complex, holding both resentment and supplication. The children were frightened by him and huddled behind me. I asked the assistant teacher to take the children to rest, then calmly walked towards him. How did you find me here? I asked, my tone showing no surprise, only detachment. I asked many people, spent a lot of money. His voice was hoarse and urgent. Eleanor, I finally found you. Come back with me. Let's start over. As he spoke, he reached out to grab my hand. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. Arthur, I thought I made myself very clear on the phone. No, not clear at all. He grew agitated, waving his arms. I know I was wrong. I was a scumbag. I was tricked by that bitch, Eleanor. For the sake of our 30 years of marriage, please forgive me this one time, okay? I don't want any children anymore. I just want to live a quiet life. I promise I'll treat you well from now on. Watching his remorseful expression, I felt no pity, only a sense of sadness and absurdity. Arthur, I'm not coming back with you. This is my home now. Home? He looked around at the dilapidated orphanage buildings and the curious black children peering from a distance, his face revealing disbelief and disgust. You call this a home? Eleanor, are you out of your mind? What can you possibly do staying here, mixing with these black children, waiting on them? What are you trying to gain? I looked at him and said each word distinctly. Peace, contentment, and freedom, and to stay close to the one I want to cherish. Arthur paused, startled. The one you want to cherish? Who? Then, as if something dawned on him, his face darkened. You have someone else, here? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I turned and pointed to the nearby hill visible in the distance. See that hill? David is buried there. David? Arthur was stunned, like a cat with its tail stepped on. Him? You and him, you two have been. Stop your filthy thoughts, I said coldly. David was a true gentleman. He never overstepped. He simply waited for me his entire life, until he died, and I, in my belated realization, only now understand what a precious thing I missed. Unlike some people, who enjoy the benefits of marriage while secretly fooling around, and then flaunt a fake son, I looked at Arthur, my eyes sharp. Arthur was hit where it hurt, his face instantly turning red. His lips trembled as he tried to retort, but he couldn't find the words. I'm staying here now, by David's grave, doing what I want to do. I feel truly content. Arthur, you should go back. It's long over between us. But he seemed to have thrown caution to the wind, resorting to shameless tactics. No, I'm not going back. If you don't come back with me, I'll stay here. I'll come beg you every day until you agree. Eleanor, I know you still have feelings for me. Think of our 30 years together. As he spoke, he tried to move closer to me again. Just then, a security guard noticed the commotion and came over, firmly asking Arthur to leave. He tried to argue, but seeing the tall, burly security guard, he ultimately backed down. He was escorted out of the children's home gate, but he refused to go far. He lingered right outside the gate, watching me with a mournful, yet obsessive gaze. I didn't spare him another glance, turning back to continue my work. I knew that with Arthur's mule-like stubbornness, he wouldn't give up easily, but he didn't understand that some hearts, once they turn cold, can never be warmed again. Some paths, once they diverge, can never be retraced. As expected, Arthur didn't give up easily. In the days that followed, he practically became a fixture at the entrance of the children's home. He started by trying to wear me down. Every day, he'd show up punctually at the gate, shouting at me through the fence, his words always reminiscing about the past, confessing his wrongdoings, and begging for forgiveness. After a few days, seeing that I remained unmoved, he tried to sway me with material things. Every day, he'd send someone from town with expensive pastries and silk scarves, but I threw them into the trash bin, untouched. The children, initially scared, grew curious. Eventually, some mischievous children began imitating his mournful tone, shouting Eleanor at him every day. This thoroughly inflamed Arthur's fragile pride. His strategy began to escalate, shifting from pleas to accusations and emotional manipulation. Eleanor, how can your heart be so cold? 30 years of marriage, and you just throw it all away. My current misery is all your fault. If you hadn't sent that report, would I be like this? What's the point of clinging to a dead man? What can he give you? I'm the one who's alive. Were you and David having an affair all along? Were you conspiring to make a cuckold out of me? His voice, hoarse and grating from agitation and Africa's dry climate, became increasingly unbearable to listen to. His words grew ever more vulgar. The security guards at the children's home increased their patrols, warning him several times not to harass the staff or children. The locals, who respected us volunteers, were thoroughly disgusted by Arthur's behavior. They would cast disapproving glances at him as they passed, some even shouting a few rebukes. When had Arthur ever been treated like this? In his former world, he was a respected writer, admired by many. Now, in this foreign land, he was like an unwelcome beggar, despised by everyone. This disparity drove him further to the brink, and his behavior grew increasingly erratic. On several occasions, he tried to force his way into the children's home, only to be unceremoniously escorted out by the strong security guards. I continued to ignore him, working, teaching, and caring for the children as usual every day. In my free time, I would sit by David's grave, clear away weeds, and place a bouquet of wildflowers I'd picked. My calm and fulfilling life stood in stark contrast to Arthur's agitated despair. After some time, he changed his strategy again, attempting to integrate himself into my life. He stopped shouting, instead sitting silently outside the children's home gate, watching me come and go, with a mournful look in his eyes. He often bought candy, trying to win over the children, but the children had already been cautioned by the teachers, and not one of them accepted anything from him, only watching him with wary eyes. This silent standoff was even more suffocating, but it also drained his energy and resources more quickly. He couldn't afford a decent hotel, forced to huddle in the shabbiest parts of town. He ate poorly and slept badly, and with his festering resentment, he quickly grew thin and haggard, looking at least 10 years older than his actual age. Days turned into weeks, and the expiration date on his visa drew closer. Finally, one dusk, he intercepted me again on my way back from the gravesite. He seemed unusually calm, but in his eyes, there was a desperation of someone making a last-ditch effort. "Eleanor." His voice was soft, carrying a weariness that bordered on pleading. "My visa, it expires next week." I stopped, watching him silently, waiting for him to continue. "Come back with me, please?" He spoke almost in a whisper. Even if we don't remarry, can we just be like old friends, caring for each other, please? Back home. I truly can't face living there anymore. We could move to another city. I can find something else to do. We could, Arthur." I cut him off, my voice sounding a little cool in the warm evening breeze. "This is my true home now. I won't leave. What you do, whether you stay or go, is your own business." The light in his eyes completely extinguished. After a long moment, he suddenly laughed, a dry, desolate sound. Fine. "Eleanor, you're truly cold-hearted." He nodded, stepping back, one pace at a time. "I'm leaving. I'm damn well leaving now, whether I live or die when I go back. It's none of your concern. You can just stay here, guarding your dead man's grave, and be your saint." He turned around, stumbling toward the town, his silhouette in the vast twilight looking particularly desolate and forlorn. I didn't watch him leave. Instead, I turned and pushed open the gate of the children's home. Inside, the children's laughter and the aroma of cooking food wafted out. It was the scent of life, of human warmth, the way life was meant to be. A few days later, I learned from the director that Arthur had boarded a flight back home. He ultimately couldn't outlast me, nor could he overcome the harsh realities of this land and his own inner loneliness. He left, carrying his disgrace and a heart full of regret, returning to a home where everything had changed and people were no longer the same. As for me, I stayed on this land, a place of new beginnings and tranquility, continuing my life. I knew that what awaited him back home would be anything but a warm harbor. Tiffany and the son he had indulged too much, like two ticking time bombs, were destined to blow the rest of his life to pieces. After returned home, I enjoyed a period of true peace and quiet. The sky remained vast and high, the children at the children's home still innocent, the wildflowers by David's grave, withered and bloomed again. I was almost able to completely erase Arthur from my memory, until about a year later, I received an overseas call from back home, the number showing it was an old neighbor of mine. "Eleanor, oh my goodness, it's really you." I finally got through. My old neighbor's voice was full of a long-lost familiarity, but she couldn't hide the excited gossip mixed within it. "Do you know, Arthur, he's in the hospital. I heard he almost didn't make it." I held the phone, my voice calm. "Oh really? What happened?" My old neighbor immediately launched into her story. "Oh, you wouldn't believe it. After you left, that vixen and that illegitimate child she brought with her really put Arthur through the ringer. He's absolutely miserable now. Apparently, while you and Arthur weren't even divorced yet, that woman and her child secretly transferred a lot of money from Arthur's accounts. Then, When Arthur wanted to divorce her to go abroad and find you, she completely dropped the pretense and took the child, sweeping up all his remaining money and vanishing without a trace. And if taking the money wasn't bad enough, she even incurred a lot of debt with loan sharks in Arthur's name. When returned, he had lost everything, his money and his family. His reputation was ruined, and all those who used to curry favor with him now avoided him. He lived alone in that empty mansion, with no one to care for him, drinking away his sorrows all day. Being all alone was bad enough, but who would have thought? A few days ago, some creditors came demanding repayment. They trashed his house, and even beat him up, enraging him so much that he had a stroke right then and there. If it hadn't been for the person collecting homeowners association fees noticing something was wrong, he would have died. He's still lying in the hospital now, partially paralyzed, and can barely speak. None of his former relatives or friends visit him anymore. They're all just watching the spectacle. Alas, if only he'd known then what he knows now. My old neighbor sighed, though her tone carried a hint of "I told you so." I listened calmly, without a ripple of emotion, because fate, from the moment he brought Dylan into my life, had already been sealed. Greed, deception, betrayal, evil deeds bear evil fruit. His downfall was his own doing, and he deserved every bit of it. Eleanor, won't you come back to see him? After all, you were married, my old neighbor asked tentatively. No, I cut her off, my voice gentle yet firm. He and I, all ties between us, good or bad, were severed long ago. His life, his death, his fortune, his misfortune, they are no longer my concern. I'm doing very well in Africa. This is my home. After exchanging a few more updates, I hung up the phone. Outside the window, some older children were playing tag with the little ones, their laughter piercing the hot wind, echoing in my ears. I smiled, and picked up my pen to write a new article. After I finished writing, I picked up my watering can again, and went to water the gerbera daisies blooming by David's grave. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any thoughts about this story, feel free to share them in the comments section. Here is Roses and Love, sharing stories about marriage and women every day. See you tomorrow.